Okay, welcome everyone to the second day of the 2023 Moqui conference. The topic for this session is artificial intelligence and Moqui, how we might use artificial intelligence in various ways. And this is looks like there was a problem with Visvendra. Hopefully he can rejoin. So this is an open panel discussion. We don't have anyone included or excluded explicitly, so everyone's welcome to chime in. There are a few thoughts I've had about artificial intelligence and related to Moqui, and a lot of these come from discussions with various people who are here today. So after I go over these, and I added them to the Google Doc that has the meeting agenda and such, after I go over these, then as Gurudaram suggested, why don't we go around in alphabetical order and give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. And if you have any thoughts on things you would like to share related to artificial intelligence and Moqui, then mention that briefly, and then we'll kind of coordinate and go from there. So the general ideas I had are these are some possible applications of artificial intelligence. One of the more obvious ones, and the one that's come up a lot in current use cases with various tools, is generating code. So starting with some sort of plain English description of what you want and let it fill in the gaps, or even start with some code and let it finish it out, defining methods, naming it adequately, hopefully, to describe what it does, and even some of the tools get into those things. This is an area where I think, especially for screens, might be very useful, and they tend to be somewhat labor intensive. So, and then getting into services and logic, there's a lot of potential for that, although a lot of stuff in artificial intelligence seems to be very boilerplate, good for boilerplate and common code. And if you're creating something very new and novel, that's something I don't have so much experience yet, but my guess is that it might have more difficulty with that. And then the data model, the entity definitions in Moqui, that's an area where AI might be helpful to add certain patterns, like there are certain things like the effective dating pattern, and with from and through dates, or certain entity concepts like the master or primary entities that have their own single field primary key, and like product or party or order header, and then related entities to them, like detail entities that have a many-to-one relationship with a primary entity. These would be things like an order item, an agreement item. A lot of these item entities throughout are like these, and they're dependent on the primary entity. They have its primary key plus an additional one to distinguish them. And then things like join entities. So these are typically going between two primary entities. Like party relationship is a good example. That's a join entity between two party records, and has additional fields to describe or constrain that relationship. And that the join entities are where things like the effective date pattern comes into play, from and through date most commonly, although can be used elsewhere. So with certain patterns like that, there might be interesting applications of AI to help generate or refine or offer suggestions for data models. So that's one possibility. Another is to help with generating more detailed requirements. So Gurudaram talked yesterday about business process stories, and that is an interesting potential application for AI, starting with a summary or brief description, and or even something like a top-level business process story, and then using AI to help generate more detailed ones that can then be edited as needed and such. But to push out ideas and language that that can help in writing those. Um, and then the next one on the list is generate designs given requirements. And this would be designs might include screen designs. They might include, which could include outlines of screens, for example, what's on the screen, or even layouts of screens. And also possibly technical designs that could help with this, perhaps a lot even. So given a business process story that is sufficiently detailed, it could help identify which entities and services and existing screens and such that would be most useful for that, most or potentially applicable for that business requirement. So those are some thoughts on the on those first three. The next is a little bit more of an out there thing where we talk about generating code, which is interesting, but even better is if we can do away with code and let AI substitute for that. And that would be something like using plain text, either speech to text is more convenient, or typing it out, saying you want to do something like place an order, for a particular customer or for a new customer, and then describe details of that customer, describe which products you want on the order, other things related to it, and then let the AI figure out which services to call in order to make that happen, and with preferably with some sort of user interface that generates a form that fills in the data that you've specified, kind of notes additional fields that might be that are either required for services that it identifies to call, or that are available and recommended, sort of thing. And then the human can describe the data they want there, or with the generated form on the fly, you type in things or correct data and such as needed before pushing the big button and saying go and call the services and record the data and such. So that's so I think that that might potentially be one of the most useful applications of artificial intelligence, where we do away with applications as thought of these days, and moving towards what's the term for it? I think it's ambient computing. I think that was the Star Trek term, and where it's sort of the computer's around and you interact with it in a more natural way, sort of as if you were interacting with a human. And then the last one is similar to the idea of using it as an alternative to screens, and that is for a report or query builder. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday, some things that have been done in other applications along these lines. But this is a useful thing that's very low risk, if you will, because there's no data mutation involved. It's just gathering and gathering data, joining it, viewing it in different ways and such. And that could potentially be very powerful, including data from the relational database and data from Elasticsearch as well, for generating graphs on the fly and charts, or tabular reports, or whatever is needed for a particular usage scenario. So with those ideas, why don't we go around and do some introductions, and then if for each, introduce yourself and a little bit of your background with Moqui, and with artificial intelligence as well, anything you've played with there. And if there's anything you'd like to share on that topic, mention it briefly, and then we'll get back to those after we go through the round of introductions. So let's do this in alphabetical order, looking at the meeting list. And first on the list is Abdullah Sheikh. If you would like to introduce yourself, and anyone who does not want to, feel free to pass, and we'll move along. Are you there, Abdullah, or in a position to talk for a moment? Okay, why don't we move on to Eamon then? Eamon, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your background with Moqui and artificial intelligence, anything you've done there, thought about there, and might like to talk about in this panel.
Sure. So my name is Ayman Abi Abdallah, and I'm currently working at Alchemy. We're in the Alchemy headquarters today, so it's a good day. I've been using Moqui since 2015 or 16. I told my story last year about how I met Moqui, which is I started with OFBiz, and then like an aha moment happened where I asked myself, I wonder who wrote OFBiz, and that's how I found David's website, and then I dumped OFBiz overnight and joined Moqui and started learning Moqui. So that was the beginning, basically. I've used Moqui in multiple production systems and applications, and I continue using it until this day. So my experience with AI is limited to academic experience. So I basically took a few machine learning courses in university, and basically coming up with machine learning algorithms particularly for real estate. That was the project that I worked on at the time. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay, great. Looks like Amir joined, and he's in alphabetic order even before Eamon. So Amir, if you'd like to go next, just doing introductions and some of your background with Moqui and any relevant artificial intelligence things that you've looked at or thought about and might like to talk about as part of this this group discussion. And I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. Good to meet everybody. My name is Amir Anjomshab. Currently, I've been working at Alchemy for almost 2 years and about a year and a half before that with MK Decision. My whole history of Moqui started from getting hired at the company of MK Decision, where my interview process was basically a question of getting to know Moqui and writing a simple service in it, where it was kind of like the whole mind-blowing process for me, where I was like, this is actually a fun framework to work with. Everything is plain simple, ready to give. And from there, I've been hooked on it, honestly. And honestly, one of the main reasons I stick around the company and sticking around with this product has been an easy way to implement. Yeah, bugs are everywhere, but it's just a very fascinating process for me to work on Moqui and go forward with it. And in terms of artificial intelligence and AIs, I've been experimenting a lot with the Moqui, with the concept of, because it's open source, so we are allowed to fix some stuff into the GPT models and see what we can do with it. But you said at the end we could discuss it more, so I'll try to see if I can hang around and talk about it. But I've done some experiences with it in terms of being able to write services, being able to feed it the universal data model book, being able to feed it the schemas that we have, and actually giving it a good business process story to be able to get me some services written or actually get me some basically implementation done in a service. Some of the fun facts I actually realized about it was very easy to recognize that you could write Groovy instead of the XML, or actually write an XML, link it to a Groovy file. And from there, some other experiences I did with it. But that one, yeah, at the end, if there were time, I'll talk more about it, what I experimented and what I saw about it. But I'm happy that you're also interested in it to move on with this topic, which I think one of the biggest power that you have is the example component that we have. I think that's where a lot of ideas for the GPT itself is coming from, mainly when I was fetching the data into it, and also the Mantle USL and the UDM, where I basically put those as an instruction that these are the base data that you should use and look up to basically find the next steps to do the code. So yeah, it's been a fascinating thing to do.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Amir. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Adam wasn't in the list, but it looks like you've joined individually now, and I should have thought of you Why don't you go ahead and go next, Adam? You got the mute figured out. There you go.
Yeah, I'm on an older level. Technical. Okay, there we go. I am one half of Brain Food. My partner in crime, Ian, is nearby. We have used OFBiz going back to 2003 or so. We've love OFBiz because it lets us not write all of that code. We're a small company. We are limited in what we can do, so we're always looking for existing technologies to then integrate together. It lets us move faster. And OFBiz and then Moqui is a check mark that we can just say, okay, we trust that that code is going to do what it needs to do, and we can service our customers a little bit faster. We tend, because of our small company, we do have a lot of odd things we will connect to the Java-based stacks over time, and not always integrate tightly with Moqui that we're talking about today. Got a couple things we might be showing off a little bit later. I don't want to kind of tip my hat too much, but stay tuned. It's going to be a fun day.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Adam. And it turns out since we did a few out of order, Ian, I think you're next in the list.
Groovy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so like Adam said, we've been a long time admirer of the community and David's work. And, you know, at the time we started using OFBiz, it was really the only serious, to me, open source ERP competitor on the landscape in a lot of ways. And still in a lot of ways, I feel like is still the king or queen, as the case may be these days, and they, them. And, but like Adam said, we tend to use a lot of different technologies. I guess, you know, our history with free software kind of goes back to Debian in a lot of cases. So we've always had a very kind of operating system view of the landscape, right? So we try to put components together into a distribution to solve problems. With regard to AI, I've always had a real interest in AI. Going back to school, I read Perceptrons by Marvin Minsky back when I was in college. And the whole concept of synthetic neurons, you know, and at that time, in the kind of early, the Matrix and so on, those in the 90s, it was like, they're going to scan our brains and we're going to live forever in a computer, man. And, you know, that obviously is not materializing so quick. But then again, now it's like some of that craziness with Neuralink is actually starting to happen, where you may actually have computers hooked into your brain. But so my roommate in college is David Hansen, the guy who built the super realistic robot that talked about wanting to kill humanity. So Sophia the robot, if you Google Sophia the robot, you can find all kinds of stuff about her, quote unquote. And so I've been you know, I've always had a real interest in natural language processing and like the chat script language and some of the other early AI stuff. And then I got into word vectorization, I guess like 2016, 2017, trying to improve on what you could do with chatbots. I guess my biggest contribution to the Sophia thing is I wrote the initial version of integration between the Blender animation system and ROS robotics tooling to be able to animate the robot using kind of the Disney-ish CGI workflow in Blender. And now I'm just super excited about what's going on with large language models, and specifically the open source ones. I think OpenAI ChatGPT is really cool, but I don't know how many of you all had read the memo that got leaked out of Google where they were noting that the open source community was lapping them, to use their words, because I guess because the community is, Google's focused on how big and powerful they are and what they can do with all their computing infrastructure. And the community is focused on like, well, how can we do the same thing with a lot less? And to the extent that the community has succeeded in that, it means you can do it a lot more. Like if you can do the same thing with a lot less, it means you can do a lot more of it because you can distribute and parallelize that effort. And that's what's happening. So I think that's why we're seeing incredible innovation in the open source AI space. So excited.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ian. Why don't we go next to Guru Dharam? Are you signaling you want to pass?
No, we couldn't hear you because we were all muted.
Oh, okay. I was just saying.
We were having difficulty, but we were having difficulty.
Okay. Yeah, the audio challenges in the conference room. Yeah.
My name is Guru Dharam Khalsa. I work for MK Decisioning Systems with a couple people here, and then became part of Alchemy. I'm a Moqui power user, meaning I think I've used almost every screen actively instead of just research-based use of the screen. And I love the system primarily because I own it, and I want to convey that to all of you. Take ownership for this product and take ownership of building new features, delivering them to the community, and really enjoying it. I'm fully against the term AI. I think it's a misnomer in most cases, and in a lot of cases, we mean conversational search or different features that computing can provide to us if we program it correctly. So I'm excited to add some new features.
Okay, great, thanks. Jens, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi all. Well, my background is I have been in academia for a couple of years before getting into the industry. There I've been mostly focused on, I've always had an interest in open source, in the process of open source, software security, networking, etc. Then I went a few years in the intralogistics business, which is basically all of the movement inside a warehouse or that kind of movement. I've been using Moqui since 2015 when I started a few projects and playing with it. Then I got more serious, and we also have a co-work where we have an office and we have tenants or customers who use the facilities. So we've done a few things with reservation bookings or reservations of the spaces, all of the invoicing, etc. So we use it on a daily basis, at least one part of it. And for external customers, we have been mostly focused on something which is very local. We have this concept of, we call it fiscal tax documents, which is basically the invoice, but it mimics the whole process we once had on paper, now in electronic form. So once you had the papers, you had to take them physically, have them stamped by the tax authority so you could use them. And that whole process is now mimicked in electronic form, where you have to use a pre-authorized sequence number, so which is signed by the tax authority in digital form. You have to include that in your documents, and they have a certain XML format and everything. So the only thing that really changed in that aspect when it was digitized was that somehow the technicians could convince the lawyers that it made no sense to call some documents the original and some documents the copy when it's an electronic signed document. Everything else is really mimicking the working of the paper. And what we have done on some other projects, for instance, we have made the software which helps big organization, the judicial system here in Chile, to make its internal evaluation process, where you have external evaluators who have to evaluate a few thousands of aspects of every one of the sits there, and they have a very strict process. So they were running it on spreadsheets, and now they have it digitized. So it was a really interesting project. And some stuff like that. Mostly, yeah, we haven't not used much of the standard Moqui business processes, but we have mostly done things that are not considered in that part. Now we're working on incorporating some of the more general workings. About AI, we haven't done much. We haven't had much experience, except maybe for the sales text. So we like to do them using some input from some tools like ChatGPT or things like that. So it sounds better, because we don't have really a specialized sales team. So that has helped out a lot. What we can expect in the future is that we might need some help in getting unstructured information, or information that's structured in different ways. For instance, I don't know, receipts from some other systems, or even written on paper, so you can recognize them and translate them into the Moqui model, so we can then process them and stuff like that. That's what we've been thinking about. So that's it. Thank you.
I guess I should turn my microphone on. Thanks, Jens. Lawrence, would you like to go next?
Hey, sure. So my name is Lawrence Tran. I work at a company called Noggin. We focus on e-commerce, and we've kind of pivoted the company a little bit. One of the offerings we do is commerce as a service. I'll be going over that in a bit, but we've been using Moqui since about 2018. And we've been able to, let's say, operate a fairly large instance with a relatively small team. In terms of AI, I would say, I have a little bit of background in terms of the machine learning type of things like that, and I kind of agree with Guru Dharm with these things are quite a bit of the marketing buzz around the actual things that go on. But I have a little bit of experience from I'd say academic level as well, but a little bit more. Nothing I'd say super practical from the ML side. We've done stuff, but nothing too groundbreaking there. On the AI side, or the newer stuff like the large language models, I've been more of a consumer of them at this point, and it's pretty fascinating because it does, work as a great tool to accelerate some of the ideas that I have, or do some of the stuff that I don't want to do from a thinking perspective. So it's pretty interesting, and maybe for future stuff, I do want to do some projects that are based off of those things to just accelerate some data collection and data extraction type of activities. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lawrence. Matt, looks like you're next in the list. If you'd like to share.
Sure. I'm Matt Warnock. I'm with Ridgecrest Herbals. I have been involved in the open source community since, I started using Linux in '93. I have been I've known of David and OFBiz since about 2000, but didn't actually start using it until 2015. About 18 months of that was more than enough, and converted to Moqui out at the end of that time period. As far as AI goes, I've been following it kind of loosely in the development and keeping an eye on it, but have not played around with it very much. So I'm all ears.
Okay,
That's
great.
it for me, I think.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Michael, would you like to go next?
Sure, I can go. So I started Moqui out of high school. I wrote some tests that with Moqui. I had just gotten out of high school. I was doing robotics programming, and I went to school for a bit, and eventually, and that wasn't working out super well. So I decided to pursue a programming career, and it worked out, and here I am. With AI, I did a bit of it in, I was trying to make a completely autonomous robot right out of high school as I was working on these tests. And I never really got into it a ton. I thought, I didn't realize the potential that it had and even in fairly basic things, but even more, somewhat more complicated things. And I think that it is it's the new platform shift, that it's the adapt or die kind of thing, where we need to really get a grip on it and be able to use it in our everyday life to increase our productivity, whether it's Moqui, whether it's GPT models, conversational AI, prediction algorithms, all this kind of stuff. I think that it's a big missing thing in what Moqui is right now, and I think that with a bit of effort, with a bit of work, we could really make it shine. So.
Great, thanks, Michael.
Sure.
Rohit, looks like you're next on the list if you'd like to introduce yourself. I guess we don't hear from Rohit now. We can always come back, by the way, for anyone who we skip as we go. Sakthi, are you there, available to share?
Yeah, David. Sorry for the background noise. I'm in the train station, but
Okay, sure.
brief introduction. Yeah. So my experience with Moqui, it all started with Ovis, like other people mentioned. We are using Ovis for some projects. We're still continuing to use that, but I hit upon Moqui just like other people mentioned. Where I'm a big fan of David, by the way. So and then I started looking at what other new work that he has done, and that's how I found Moqui. And for newer projects, we are using Moqui. Currently, we are building a finance automation platform. Basically automating account payable, receivable, and expense management. And our goal is to have like a straight-through processing for it's for like service providers or service organizations or manufacturing or any sort of organizations. Just take care of the finance piece. So what we are doing is we are using some tools that use machine learning to process the invoice, so that will eliminate the manual reconciliation part. Currently, we are building the finance payable part, where when you send the purchase invoice to the vendor and the vendor sends you the sales invoice, we use a tool called Mindy, which kind of processes the document and gives you the invoice details, and you kind of match that with your purchase invoice, without any manual intervention. And also, like we integrate with real-time payments. So which means if there is no recon break, then you'll be able to initiate the payment automatically. But if there is any recon break, then you kind of create a reconciliation report, and somebody will be manually intervening, to fix the breaks, and they can retry the finance transaction part. And also, we plan to integrate with accounting systems and do recon, like a three-way recon, basically between orders, invoice, and accounting. Currently, we are targeting the India market. And we are building account payable first, then we'll move on to receivable and expense management. And I think yesterday I was, dialed in for part of it. I'm currently in India, so the timings, it is like nighttime here. But then I just wanted to mention, we are trying to build a new team. We just hired like fresh out of college folks, and pretty much our source for training is the Moqui documentation in the website. Uh, and we have been able to go through that documentation, do the tutorial, and that by itself is just enough for people to get started. And then, just like anybody else, they rip open the code and be able to get productive in like 2 to 3 weeks. And just like one feedback that the new joinees have given is maybe if we can add some more code snippets in the documentation, that might be helpful. But I know as part of the community forum discussions, we have talked about this multiple times, and it is going to be hard to maintain code within documentation. So the best way, I mean, I have been just telling them the best way to learn is to look at the code by itself, right? And that is working for them. So again, like your thanks to the community for the great work. It's really a good framework for people like us to get started and get productive pretty quickly.
Great, thanks, Sakti. And that's an interesting application as well, automating certain more cumbersome tasks like reconciliation. Yeah. Noticed someone joined who I'm not familiar with, Ragid Abdel Khalik. If you'd like to introduce yourself, feel free. Or if not, we can come back to you as well. Shabaz, you around?
Yeah, hello everyone.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
So
Shabaz.
myself Shabaz Khan. Myself Shabaz Khan. I started my career in early 2017 with Android technologies. So there I come to meet Vishwendra Singh Rajput, and he told me about the Moqui framework. So basically, what we are doing, we are using Moqui to solve various challenges that come into e-commerce in day-to-day life of every vendor. Okay, and as of now, I did not expose anything about AI, but I'm very excited to use AI with Moqui as we are all planning to integrate it with Moqui. Okay, so that's it from my side. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. And Ragid, looks like you started talking for a minute. If you'd like to share now, that would be fine.
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm Ragid. I'm from Nadvarian Company. I'm sorry I'm on the road, so I just wanted to go and listen to the conference. It's a very great conference, actually, and thank you for this for helping us with Moqui framework. I love it, actually. Maybe when I arrive, I'll make a better introduction to this.
Sure,
Thank you,
that's
David.
just fine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. And let's see. Well, we're going back in the list a little bit. Rohit, if you're around, feel free to share now.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Rohit Pawar, and currently I am working in a Hotwix Commerce. And in a, if I can say, in my journey of started from starting of the Hotwix Commerce, in which I get a task of a Moqui multi-instance, and and I have started exploring and how to work make work Moqui multi-instance and how internally it works. I will understand, and I put the questions related to Moqui multi-instance of I got some doubts in the Moqui forum and related, and at last by slight of struggling I have a confusion in Nginx working, how it is working, how it is mapping, load balancing. It was fun of me. Uh, make work Moqui multi instance, and so I have completed the Moqui multi-instance POC, and plus we in Hotworks Commerce we are going to use this POC for in future regarding to like scale up or multi-instance thing, and plus I also did a POC on Moqui Hazelcast, which we are using for the asynchronous remote execution services. Like, yeah, that's from the side.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thanks, Rahit. Yeah. Let's see. Vince, looks like you're next on the list if you'd like to share now.
Okay, let me turn my speaker on. There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. Vince. Try to make it brief. Worked with Moqui or Octas years ago, and have been working with Moqui for the last couple of years. Operate under some of you, most of you, I think, on the call probably were on the call yesterday. I operate under the umbrella called the Solve Group, Solve with an X. There's a couple of repositories out there with components that are public and open source if you're interested in checking them out. A sales component and what I'm calling a work management component, which is just a simple version of using work efforts, aka simple version of HiveMind for tracking projects and tasks. One notable point that's interesting to look at on that one is we've converted all those screens to Quasar screens, so it just has a little, a little more modern look and feel, and gives us a little more flexibility in terms of, not having to do a full page refresh and those kinds of things. So feel free to check those out if you want. Also, for those of you that saw the presentation yesterday, here's a link to my website with the quote to revenue topic that I discussed. It has some screenshots in there of how we're using agreements and product catalog for pricing. With respect to AI, I'm mostly interested. I'm kind of in Guru Dharam's camp. It's a big term, it can mean a lot of things, and it's also, a label that's getting slapped on a lot of things just because everybody's, it's what all the cool kids are talking about right now. So I'm mostly interested in practical use cases. And David, I think a couple that you mentioned are real areas of opportunity, possibly, or around code generation and how you interact with the application as more of just kind of another interface that's more natural, like placing an order, things like that. I think that's where there's real opportunities.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vince. Zvendra, would you like to go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Vishwendra from NOI Technologies. And I started my career with exploration of OBIS in 2013. And I started exploring Moqui from 2014. And I built one of the projects application while I was working for Hotworks Systems at that time, which was built on top of Moqui. And after that, I have built so many applications on top of Moqui framework. And I started a company, NOI Technologies, in 2016. And since then, we have been providing the services, development and consultancy services on top of Moqui framework. And I also started another company in India, IFN Media Private Limited, and that is providing the smart city solutions to urban local government bodies like municipal corporations and all. So those all solutions are also built on top of Moqui framework. So it's been like, I mean, the backbone for our company is Moqui framework. So end to end, all the developments that we do here at NOI Technologies are mostly based on the Moqui framework. And when I talk about the AI opportunity that we can have, certainly because I explored ChatGPT for generation of the code for various languages, even some languages like Pine script. So, I mean, that was really great to see a lot of lines of code being generated so smoothly, so nicely in a like few minutes. So I would like to see that happening for Moqui framework also. Like I type something and it writes the code for generating the screen or like services. So I don't know like how and how much time that is going to take, but certainly it will be great to see those things happening.
Great, thank you. Before we move on, is there anyone else in the conference room who hasn't joined directly and isn't in the list, or that's joining with anyone else? No? Okay. Hopefully we got
And
everyone
we were
there.
thinking that we would add 30 minutes to this session and cut
I
lunch.
think I'm doing
into-
that, extending a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, might as well. Sure. The let's see, as we get into this, I had a couple of other thoughts. When I use the term artificial intelligence, I think about it as the old school term, not large language models or machine learning or anything in particular, but the entire umbrella. And so that includes primarily things that are based on neural networks and forward and back propagation algorithms and that sort of thing. But there are other things that emulate human intelligence, I suppose you could say, that would fall into that category. One thing that I firmly believe in is that while artificial intelligence is a very useful tool, it will never replace human ingenuity and what humans are capable of. There are certainly a lot of things that humans do in jobs and the funny way we structure society and organizations that can be replaced or heavily augmented or improved, efficiency improved by use of artificial intelligence tools. But I'm still a firm believer that, especially with more open access to artificial intelligence, that it's not something that would replace humans in society, but help each human in society to be much more productive and able to do the work they want to achieve their goals, that sort of thing. So it's interesting looking at. By the way, I forgot to mention on the topic of with alternative to screens and knowing about services and which services to call. Part of the reason I think that is a better application of it than manipulating data directly in the database is because artificial intelligence itself, including large language models that are getting more advanced, have difficulty with mathematics and getting exactly the right things in the right places with very good consistency. So there's sort of a balance there between what is algorithmic and predefined and then what is kind of figured out on the fly by some sort of artificial intelligence tool. So that said, let's see, I guess some mentioned having done specific things with it. And is there, let's see, Amir, for example, you mentioned you'd tried playing around with some feeding Moqui details into it and code generation. How was that? Like how successful was that in terms of generating useful things or helping you with tasks that you have or other experimentation you've done?
So currently, there are some cons to the process, specifically, especially going through just the ChatGPT process where everybody is more familiar with. you still have to feed it a lot of data in terms of being able to explain the system to him, like the packaging structure or maybe basically the services in use and the purposes behind them. So currently, as what you said, correct, it doesn't have that much understanding of trying to figure out the algorithm behind it or basically being so smart enough to understand certain services and the task behind them to benefit those services in the code that it writes for you. And one of the other things that it kind of like got me interested in learning about vector databases is because of memory management issue. And where currently most of the GPT services out there, you have a limited amount of data where the GPT instance itself can remember and can reference on and move forward. This is more like if I want to feed it the whole universal data model and maybe give it 2 more schemas, after feeding it the second schema, it would start forgetting about half of the universal data model. As it goes forward, the issue becomes more memory management system, right? That it needs to basically remember these tasks. So this is where I kind of did a prompt engineering in terms of, hey, here's a summary of everything about Moqui, some of the use cases that it can do, what are everything is used for, services, screens, and then from there being able to output some results. So that was one of the cons that I had. But realistically, some of the main services that I was able to basically implement with it was I was able to explain to him what is order header, what is order item as an example. And from there, maybe give him task on aggregating some data on these entities or write me a service where you can join a couple of databases together, make a service call. From there, maybe like cascade, like concatenate the first name and last name together, give me an output. Very simple, straightforward services where it can basically look up on the information I gave it to him to practice on and give you an output on it.
Interesting. I wonder if some of those things, I guess, are probably limitations to the systems like that are built in, like ChatGPT and possible solutions are additional training, especially with open models where there's more potential for that. You can only do so much of that with the commercial ones, but with open models where they could be additionally trained on Moqui specific details.
Absolutely. But then from there are these recent tools where like something like Auto GPT, where it's a combination of GPT itself, creating a multi-thread process of multiple agents on the GPT and being able to communicate to each other, where it expands the memory knowledge now. It's basically having 10 instances of GPT running, each with their own limit of memory, and they now can all remember a certain task and they can communicate with each other. My recent experiment has been with that kind of a concept, which is currently called Auto GPT, which is just basically based off of the GPT-4, but with a little bit more data management behind it and a little bit more tools added on upon it to be up to date with the news, having access to the internet, and being able to just practice based off of those.
Interesting. Neat. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Amir. And then Michael, I think if I remember right, you mentioned you had done some experimentations and worked on some things. I don't know if you were going to talk about that during your presentation or if there's anything you'd like to talk about now. Figure out audio.
We're synchronizing.
So what I did was really basic. I just spent a couple hours, and I was able to scrape data from the website, basically put it in the LangChain Python program, and I was basically able to index a whole bunch of different data, and then the AI was able to figure out a document. I'm not entirely sure how the LangChain does it, so it just but it was actually able to query the various documents in like in-memory database and find which one was most relevant for the question that I was asking. And it wasn't super great at it, but it was a proof of concept. It took like a tiny amount of time, like 2.5 hours. But I mean, I think you're exactly right that the problem to actually use it with such a complicated system such as Moqui, just understanding the data model, just understanding the services, it requires something like it's all about like the memory management. It's smart, but it has a very small memory. And so what we need to do is we need to have some like a vector database. It's a whole bunch of startups right now that are basically doing that. I know, but they're basically taking this massive, and it's interesting because it's actually using the AI models to do something called embedding, which is like super easy semantic search. So if you have a whole bunch of documents in your database, then these are able to embed the different embed the different ideas that the text represents in a way that it can quickly search through. And so continuing with that would be.
Oh, we lost you, Michael. The audio. I think you were. It was going through Eamon, so. and Eamon, you're on mute still. There's.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Rewind 20 seconds.
Yeah.
What was the last thing you remember? How about that?
You're talking about documents, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So basically, what it's able to do is a semantic search where you have all these different documents, and it's basically indexing them in a way, instead of being numeric, it's semantic. But I mean, it's actually semantic with numbers, but that's the second point. And like, I think that for something like this to be useful with such a complicated system, it has to get the embeddings and search right with natural language processing. So the actual AI can ask the database or whether it's a document or relational or whatever, can ask it for certain things. It's the memory management problem.
Yeah. That reminds me of another one that I didn't include in my list earlier, but I think you had talked about at one point, Michael, is the maybe a different sort of document. I think maybe you were referring to like Elasticsearch documents and such, as opposed to documentation sorts of things. But the potential for user support with a chatbot of some sort that has been trained on all of the Moqui documentation and other things from the forum and other resources that are out there, and if it can read code even better and explain like, how do you go about doing this, like how do I sorts of questions, like how do I record a credit memo for customer service reasons, or how do I handle an overpayment, or less frequent things like that people sometimes need to do, especially, or developer documentation, like how do I structure this form on this screen so it looks this certain way, or whatever. Yeah, so for documentation, kind of a text generation, as opposed to even providing references to existing documentation, which would be useful, like kind of a fancier search, I guess, but even describing, based on what it learns from reading the documentation, how to go about certain things would be a neat application for it. Let's see.
I'd like to add one more thing for you, David. What you guys
Sure.
are saying is also like the newest thing that just came out, which has been an on and off beta, where it's called the code interpreter right now, that is being created by the OpenAI company. And it kind of has this concept explained in pretty nice details, where you have certain directories. So it's basically like an IDE you define certain directories. In certain directories, you define certain documentations, maybe how to do, and the schemas of your system, where it can be a point of reference now. So instead of using the memory to being able to always remember all of this information, now it has a point of reference too. So basically, based on the task that you provide, it would be able to chop it up and say he wants to create a service. Now, like maybe it points the reference to the schema that it tells you how to create a service. Then if the service is asking you to use a certain entity, now it uses a point of reference where I know where to go look up this entity, the documentation on it, the use cases maybe on it, and how I should approach this process. And instead of using all your memory to remember all of them, it's now a point of reference. This is the newest thing they have implemented, which is mainly for code interpretation. And that's where I think it's headed. I think we're still at the very beginning stages of this, but it's definitely coming up along pretty nicely.
Interesting. Yeah, that's neat. And actually, the term code interpretation, I guess that's getting to something very specific there. But another potential application is like if the AI can read through existing code and then describe in English or whatever language in human readable form what it does, then summarizing it or in detail, that could also be very useful. Or even to the point like, when I push this button, what's it going to do? I know a lot of people using Moqui applications have that question frequently. So, yeah, that's great. I guess, Adam, you mentioned maybe you and Ian were going to talk about some things in the next session. I guess that was mostly focused on Kubernetes, but is there anything that you guys have done with AI that you'd like to share in this session?
I've unmuted.
I'd say everything I've done is fairly preliminary. I've played with LangChain and Llama CPP to be able to run some of the models just on CPU. I think that the StarCoder project is really interesting, which is a specialized open source code LLM targeted at kind of doing a co-pilot like feature. So, and I think we've been talking, like some of the discussions about the memory, or I think it's context memory, right? And it's limited. And so I guess what we want to do is a fine tuning where you take an existing model and then further train it on the Moqui materials. And so that then its sort of working memory is focused on your query or prompt or whatever you're trying to do, or maybe like some of your live transaction data, but that the baseline code and schemas and everything in Moqui is already trained into the model, so it doesn't have to consume the working memory.
So I actually did research a bit about that kind of thought process.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that the fine tuning that the people actually do is off of the actual format of the response and the input, rather than the actual knowledge that's embedded in it. Like most of the time, like actually getting that knowledge in there is a whole nother process.
Because like I know StarCoder, they have StarCoder base that covers like 80 different programming languages, but then they have a fine tuning on top of the base that's for Python.
Yeah.
And like extends its knowledge for Python. So like we'd want to take the base and train it on Moqui and Moqui's infrastructure, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, that would work probably.
I mean, honestly, I'm again totally green on this stuff's emerging so quickly. It's like, it's hard to even keep up with what's going on, let alone do something with it.
Yeah, right.
What I would like, if I had a magic wand that I could wave, back in the university days, I majored in software testing, computer science, and my work towards the master's degree was related to software testing. So at the time, there was a concept called testing software by following something called a DU chains, which is definition usage chains. And the concept says that if you find all the definitions for a variable and you test all the usages successfully, then you've basically tested that piece of code. So what would be interesting is if we can have like some sort of AI tool that would examine a service and derive test cases based on DU chains. That would be something interesting to improve the quality of the code.
Yeah, that would be good application, especially with continuous delivery sorts of processes and having more confidence in either avoiding regressions or new functionality as much as it can understand of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the trend is, people want to take AI and add. And so I think a better initial usage would be, okay, let's use AI to improve the quality of what we have first, and then we'll think about adding.
And even and that's an issue with anything that comes out of AI, especially in these early days where they tend to just make stuff up. and including with code or other things that they generate or other things they do. So having other AI that keeps an eye on what the AI does is might be a useful application, as well as keeping an eye on what the humans do in some cases. So, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Damon. Yeah.
Are you saying that automatic coding still requires code review?
A pretty thorough code review, yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yep.
So do we want to take a short break before jumping into the next topic?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we do that? So we've gone over a little bit, but I think, is there anything else anyone would like to talk about before we close this session on Moqui and AI? I was wondering if anyone had looked into Mosaic ML. I've heard that has come out, the MPT-7B model. It's one of the large language models, and it says it's open source. I was trying to look up what the license is, but I haven't been able to find it yet. But anyway, that's one of the more successful open ones that I've heard of recently in terms of some of these standardized tests that are that a bunch of these large language models are being run through.
What was that again?
Mosaic ML, and you can see it at mosaicml.com.
It's crazy how fast things are progressing. It's it's progressing so fast that it's like, is it really like how much is worth putting time into like a single project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's going so fast that it's like,
by the time you learn it, there's another project that you should learn.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah. And let's see. Yeah. Okay. Before we close the session, looks like John V, is that how you say your name? Looks like you just joined. We were doing a round of introductions and people sharing their history with Moqui, and the topic of this session is Moqui and artificial intelligence. And so, if you've done anything along those lines, sharing about that as well. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So I'm Janvi Talreja, and I work with Hortex Commerce as a software engineer. I've been working with them from the last 2 years, and I've been primarily working with Moqui, doing something around data models and services, and working on integration systems. And that's my history with Moqui, and that's how I got started with it. So talking about Moqui and AI, I really haven't done much work or really haven't thought that way in terms of Moqui and AI together. But since AI has been trending a lot, and there are a lot of things that we can do with AI, so integrating Moqui with AI or maybe using them together would definitely be something that I and a lot of people in my team will be looking forward to. So maybe from all of your conversations, I'll take something back for my team.
Sure. Yeah, and we've recorded these sessions so you can watch them later as well and share them with your team.
Yeah.
So great. Thanks for introducing
Thank you.
yourself. It looks like there was one other person who joined as well. Oh, Raghi, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, hello everyone again. Sorry for that. I just finished my work. It's 7 in the evening here. So we've been working on Moqui since a long time ago. Right now, I'm not a technical person. I'm a computer science, but I left development since some time. So I consider myself a business analyst, more or functional. We worked on one of the ERPs with one of the construction companies, and we used a lot of modules available in Moqui, starting from the party management to the procurement, purchase requisition, purchase order, shipment, receiving, issuance, and definitely the accounting system. And we added some kind of segmentation on the accounting system, like you add the project, you add the department, you add for more cost management, because one of the things that they criticize about the system, maybe because cost control. So we did some segmentation on the accounting part, and we also added some stuff related to projects and the tasks, like what material they issue. When they issue the material and from the inventory, how do they determine the cost of this material, and also the human resources, like what are the rates of these employees, and also the equipment. We use the timesheets for both the employees and the equipment to make some kind of cost control on every task within the project. So we used a lot of modules inside the ERP, and definitely we extended many modules that are not available, and we'll be happy to contribute on this later on. Also, I started a new company in end of 2022. We also used the Moqui entries to make some kind of product related to social support. I called it social support platform, where contributors and beneficiaries are linked together to where the contributors, our countries and stuff like that. So it's like of social support, where the contributors contribute money to the organization, like an NGO or stuff, and the beneficiaries we use the request entities for like healthcare, for social support, for career, for experience, 5 kinds of different requests. Also, we use the financial accounts for this to make some kind, not accounting system, the financial accounts, so that we know each beneficiary how much we gave to him, and each contributor how much he contributed. And we use the project management module as well, like a crowdfunding, as kind of crowdfunding. So it's still in process. But I would like to say one thing about the look and feel that yesterday Guru has already mentioned. I hope that the look and feel can be, we work more on the look and feel, because sometimes the clients repel such look and feel. So we are obliged to do what Guru has said, that we have to avoid it, making APIs. So we're using the API system and connecting it with the front end and other front end systems. And for example, I'm using also the chatbots right now through WhatsApp to create beneficiaries, to create contributors through WhatsApp. So this is part of the AI that we're trying to introduce. And I would like to add something regarding to messaging. If we can do, since there is a messaging module also inside Moqui, if we can do like some kind of summarization one for the customer support. So once one person sends a message to the customer support, after 5 to 7 days or many tickets, we can have a summary of this customer, so that when the customer support sees or opens a new request, gets a new request from a customer, he can see his history, because every time you call a customer support here, you have to repeat the whole story from the beginning, because he doesn't have the time maybe to check all the messages sent or tickets opened. So this is one of the things also we should take it into consideration. In addition also to the ordering stuff, if we can, for example, make an AI module where to see which orders are maybe for, yeah, and the preferences of each customer, that would be also a good idea to invest in.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Summarizing, because you can get all the communication events and so on that stack up over time, or notes on parties and orders, and they get scattered around in different places. And yeah, that's an interesting thought. Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Ragib. And let's see, another person who joined, and we'll close this session soon and take a break. But Girendra, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. You're on mute, looks like. There you go.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. Recently, I'm working on development part also in Moqui, but mostly my work is in DevOps part, means deployment of the Moqui. So I always follow Michael work in the forum. So he always mention everything, how we can use Docker, Kubernetes, and the deployment file and Docker Compose file. So all those things, and he have done tremendous job in forum also to badge system. If somebody is doing and somebody is commenting the questions, and he will get the badge, all those things. But mostly my work is related to the DevOps part. So how we can do the deployment in best way to the Moqui, like containerization. So and I am helping Vince, because I am working with the Vince. Vince always want to do different things in deployment part also. So currently he's yesterday he already showed everyone to how he is trying to use the AWS marketplace. So when everything gets done in AWS, then we will move to Azure and GCP. So everything is moving slowly, but we will catch up and we will make some standard deployment method what everyone should follow also, because you already done good work in deployment parts in Docker also. You created how we can take database backup, all those files also you have created. Moqui run, if somebody use Postgres and MySQL, so all those deployment compose file you already done that. But I will also learn from all those files and make some contribution in future, definitely.
Okay,
And thank you. You are giving good opportunity for everyone to contribute and do something. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Girendra. That's a good lead into the next session, where Ian and Adam will be talking about titled Patterns of Kubernetes. So it will be look forward to seeing what they have to share there. Why don't we close this session, take a break for about 10 minutes, or if we can get started a little bit sooner than that, then if people are gathering, then we'll do that to move up some time. But we'll go into the lunch hour a little bit, and Ian and Adam, if you can see how the timing is on yours. I don't know how much time you need or had planned, but we get still about 45-50 minutes in there, and then we'll take a late lunch, and if we need to go a little bit later into the hackathon and such, that's probably fine. So thank you for sharing, everyone, and let's see. I should stop the recording now, and then we'll take a break and meet back here. So see you soon.
So